Hello everybody and welcome to art class. Today we're going to do a project that has to do with texture, okay? This might be a new word for you. Texture, you can see it right there. Can you try to say that word? Texture. Kind of a silly word, isn't it? Some of you might know what this is. This might be a review for some of you. Some of you it might be something totally new. We're going to make a picture of a really silly bird, and it's going to have a fluffy, kind of feathery texture. So we're going to talk about what that means. So they had a bumpy thing, a smooth thing, a slimy thing. Those are all different textures, all right? So texture basically means describing the way something feels, right? So for instance, this is my friend Honks, all right? And if I feel Honks, Honks has kind of a soft texture, right? And then, let's see, this is a little football toy. And if I squeeze this, it's got kind of a squishy texture, right? Let's try one more thing. Let's say I have this little Game Boy that somebody made me out of these perler beads, right? And if I feel that, it's got kind of a bumpy texture. It feels bumpy, right? So, oh, I got one more. This is a fun one. This is a little, somebody made this. This is me. And they made it out of wool. So it's got kind of a soft and squishy and fluffy texture. So that's kind of a funny little textured face. So we're going to make a really funny, kind of silly drawing, and we're going to use texture to make this drawing really come alive. So I'm going to aim my camera down so you can see my paper. And what we're going to make is like kind of a silly bird. Or if you want to do things a little differently and make it kind of a silly monster, make up your own animal, that's okay. I'm going to give you some basic guidelines here. You can copy it exactly if you want, or you can kind of do something a little differently. So for the eyes of the bird, I'm just going to draw two big circles. I'm going to get a better marker than this. Hang on just a moment. Okay, hopefully this one's a little better. So I'm going to draw a nice circle for the eye, and then another circle here for the second eye. Okay. And you can do it differently. You know, there's 100 different ways you can make eyes. That's fine. I'm going to put a circle here inside the eye and one here. They're kind of looking inward, kind of cross-eyed. And then maybe I'll put another circle inside there. That's how I'm going to make my eyes. And you know what? I still don't have a good marker, so hang on a second. All right, I've got a nice marker now, so you should be able to see it really clearly. There we go. So, you know, you can do this differently if you want. Like I said, you could give it 3 eyes if you want. You want to make it like a silly monster with 3 eyes. I'm going to make this like a bird. So I'll give it a beak. The beak is kind of like almost like a triangle shape. You see that? Almost like a triangle for the beak. And we'll put 2 little nostrils on it. It's like its nose. So this is the basic kind of drawing here. Now let me give you an example of how you could do it differently if you want. So like maybe you want to make one that has 3 eyes because you just want to have more of a silly drawing. And then maybe the mouth is like a little monster mouth with a little tooth like that, like a happy little monster, right? So that's another way you could do it. Or you could invent your own way to do it. So I totally encourage you to do it your way. Now is when we add the texture. The whole head of the bird and the neck of the bird, or whatever you're making, is going to have texture. All right, and I'm going to use some colored pencils. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use some crayons. Hang on. I was planning to do colored pencils, but then I realized that I think this would be a fun one for crayons. You can use whatever you have at home. Even if you just don't have any colors and just have a pencil, you can still do this with just one color. It'll still look really cool. So just use whatever you want. Now, we're going to give this bird a fuzzy texture. So it's going to look like if you were to touch it, it'd be nice and soft and fuzzy. Kind of like this, almost. but a little more like a fluffy, soft, fuzzy texture. And we're going to do that by drawing lots of little hairs. So pick a color that you really like for it, and we're going to just lightly draw lots of lines going around it. You see how I'm doing this? Just lots and lots of lines. And I'm not even pressing that hard. I'm pressing kind of soft. And the lines are going all the way around. We're going to do lots of lines for this one. So you don't have to go really slow. If you're going really slow like this, oh boy, that's going to take a long time. So we want to kind of just be a little free with it and just draw lots of those lines. I'm not scribbling back and forth. I'm still drawing one line coming out like this. You see? Line, line, line. And they're all pointing outward like that. So draw lots of lines going around. And then sometimes I'll go through again, maybe pressing a little harder and add some more. You could add some down here by the eyes. I'm not drawing over the eyes or over the mouth, but I'm getting pretty close to it and filling in this space too. You see that? And then we also add some lines. So there's going to be like a neck right here. So look at how I do those lines. Underneath, I draw them coming down this way, and I draw them coming down this way. All right, so it's starting to look like a fuzzy kind of animal kind of thing. You can see what we're going for. It's really silly. And what we're going to do is layer in some more colors, because the more colors we put in, the more kind of fuzz and fur this is going to have. And let's just say it's going to just look cooler. So maybe I'll take a red, and I'll go in and I'll do the same thing, going around, adding all that nice fuzz. The more lines you draw, the fuzzier it's going to look. So just go all around adding all those lines, and you just keep going in, adding new colors and adding more and more layers to that nice fuzzy animal of yours, and it's going to look so cool. I'm going around with red, and I'm going to pick more colors. And yeah, you just keep building it up, and I go down the neck again like this way. See that? It's looking cooler with each color I choose. And choose your colors wisely. Think about it. Think, what color do I think would look really good in here? You can use any colors you want. It's up to you. And it's really going to affect what your picture looks like, depending on what colors you choose. And they all should look different. Adding some nice yellows in there. And yeah, I'm just going to work on this for a little while, and I'll check back in with you in a few minutes. So go ahead and work on your bird or your animal or your monster, whatever it is, and just keep adding some colors. And I'll check in a few minutes for some next steps of things that we can do. If you're finished and looking for more to do, I'll give you some more ideas. But this one's going to take some patience. It's going to take, you're going to have to focus. Sometimes when I do this, I like to put on some nice music, something to help me focus a little bit, and just kind of get in the zone and relax, and just keep going at it for a little while. This is one that takes patience, and it takes a little work to really build up that texture. And if your hand gets tired, you could take a little break too. Whoops, I broke my crayon. Sometimes drawing all these lines can make your hand kind of tired, so feel free to take a little break, stretch out those hands a little bit. Whatever you got to do. And I'm going to give you a few more minutes to finish doing your textures before we go on to the next step, because I tend to work pretty quickly. So I'll give you a little while. All right, I was just working on this kind of silly little monster and thought I'd give him like kind of a beard. Like this reddish purple is his face, and then the bluish purple is his beard here and his hair. So he's got the same texture but different colors. So that's kind of fun. There's a lot that you can do with this. So I'm going to go back to my bird. Wow, that's a wild looking bird. And we can color the bird's beak and the bird's face. Or, you know, if you have a monster, whatever it is that you have, you can color it. Now, I'm going to give you a tip. This is something you can try. You don't have to do this, but you can definitely try it out. I'm going to give the bird's beak a smooth texture, like a shiny, smooth texture, you know, like a bird's beak. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll take my orange or whatever color you're going to use. If I press a little harder with the orange, check this out. It's pretty dark, right? So I'm going to put dark on the edges, on the sides of the beak. And the middle is going to be white. So watch what I do. I'm going to go dark, and then look, I press a little lighter. Like I hold the crayon very softly, or pencil, or whatever you have, and I hold it very softly and barely press it on the paper and just color a little bit. And then it's a little lighter. You see that? It goes from dark to light. And then I leave some white in the middle. Look at that. It looks like it has a shiny, smooth texture, doesn't it? Isn't that neat? And then, you know, you can do the eyes however you want to. We can color in these. I'll color his eyes blue here. And you can even do dark and light colors with your eyes if you want to. Try to give those a texture. Try it out. See how it works for you. So that's the basics of this one. From this point on, if you've already gotten to this point, you can just spend some time adding extra stuff. Like maybe I want to draw some things in the background. If we can add a horizon line. A horizon line is like where you draw the ground and the sky. So what if I draw a horizon line behind the bird? It's in the middle of the page, so it comes this way, and then on the other side of the bird, it comes over this way. You see how I did that? Here, and then I go over on this side and draw it over here. So what that means is, here's the ground, and here's the sky, right? Ground, sky. And you can add all kinds of funny stuff into your picture. You could add other birds flying in the sky or running around. You could add some houses down here. Whatever you want. You can get super creative with this picture. So maybe I'll add another bird flying in the sky. And I'll give it some texture. I'll do it the same way. Like maybe I'll draw some eyes. And I'm making this one smaller. And a little beak. And then I can draw the rest of it with texture so that it looks like a fuzzy little bird in the sky. I'll give it the head, I'll give it the long neck, and then I'll give it a big fuzzy body with that same kind of texture. And then maybe some big fuzzy wings. All right, see, it's got some big fuzzy wings and a body, and I've got my little textured bird. And I can do the same kind of thing where I'm adding little lines. Maybe this one's got kind of a slightly different color variation. Maybe all the birds will have their own beautiful colors, because they're all different and beautiful in their own way. And I'll even give it some little feet. That's fun. Color the beak. This one will have green eyes. Cool, look at that. You can even do texture for the grass. Watch how I do this. Maybe I'll use I'll start with a lighter green. So I'm going to draw lots of lines in the grass. It's going to take some time, but it's worth it because it's going to look really cool. So instead of coloring the grass just all flat green, I'm drawing lots of lines. And when I have all those lines going in the same direction, it's going to look like grass. We have a grassy texture. Isn't that neat? I'm going to add another, like a darker green to it too. Just like with the bird, we used a lot of different colors to build up the texture. I'm going to do the same thing with my grass. Lots of lines in the grass. And then I'm going to find a darker green for the grass. Let's see. Here's kind of a little nub of a dark green crayon. This will work for me. And see, I'm just taking my time to relax and just draw lots of these little green lines. It's a lot of work, but I know it's going to look so cool when I'm done. And that's what keeps me going, is saying, man, I can't wait to see what this looks like when I'm done. Wow, look at that grassy texture. That looks like real grass that you could roll around in. So when you're adding things to this picture, just think about the texture. You think, is this a smooth texture? Think of a word to describe it. Grassy? Bumpy texture? What kind of texture does a cloud have? Let's see. Maybe I'll try to draw a cloud. And clouds can be any kind of shape. There's a cloud. And maybe I'll just do some very soft coloring on the bottom. Just on the bottom. And that will give it like a nice fluffy. Doesn't it look kind of fluffy? Just along the bottom, just color very softly. Maybe I'll draw some little bumps. And that looks like it has a nice fluffy soft texture, doesn't it? So we're just playing around with textures and trying different things, seeing how you can use textures in your drawing. Cool. And maybe I'll do the sky a little bit. I always like to do a sunset. You could color the sky blue if you want, but I like to use beautiful sunset colors. So I'm going to start with some purple. And if I use the side of my crayon, it actually does give it kind of a texture. Look at this. If you look really close at that, doesn't that have an interesting texture there? That's from using the side of the crayon. Sometimes, if they're your own crayons, you can do this. Or if you're in my art class, I don't mind if you do this with my crayons, you can peel the paper off of the crayon a little bit and use that side. You hold it down like that, and it makes a nice texture. So I'm going to use that texture for my sky. My sunset. Did that a little bit. Now I'm going to peel some of the paper off my red. And I'll use the side of the crayon to make that nice texture once again. You can even make them overlap each other. This is a nice way to do the sunset. That's nice. And then maybe I'll add some orange. Gonna take the paper off. Beautiful, beautiful sunset. And then the yellow. Because the sky turns all kinds of beautiful colors when the sun's rising or the sun's setting. You don't always have to color it blue. You can have a little fun with it. Doesn't that look nice? Wow, what a beautiful day for my bird, for my textured bird and his textured grass and his textured sky and his little textured friend. Let's see, you've got a little bit of time left. Let's try something else. What if I make a rock and give it a bumpy texture? I'll put a big rock, make it nice and bumpy, some kind of bumpy lines to make it. And then I'll add some bumps on it like this. You see those bumps? It's got a bumpy texture like that. And then maybe I'll color it with some gray. Yeah, that looks like a nice bumpy rock in the grass. I'll even maybe use another color like some brown. Add more bumps to it. Give it that nice rough look. And I made a nice bumpy rock. So I'd say we got a bumpy texture, grassy texture, fuzzy texture. We've got a soft texture. And I don't know what I would call this texture for the sunset. I'll just say it's a sky texture. I don't know. That's a tough one. So we got lots of different textures in this picture. I'm just going to try some other ones. Here's my monster here. Maybe in this monster's world they have rocks, but their rocks are a little different. They have spikes on them. So this has got a spiky texture. You know, it's got like a cactus might have a spiky texture. So draw lots of little spikes, maybe even some little lines. Lots of little lines that look like spikes. So that looks like he has a rock that has a spiky texture. And I can maybe color it with some blue just for fun. So he lives in his own world with different kinds of rocks and things. Maybe let's think of some other textures. Maybe in his world they have clouds, but their clouds have a different texture. Let's see. Let's think of a texture for the cloud that we haven't done yet. Maybe this cloud has a rough texture like sandpaper. So I'll draw lots of little dots on there to show that it's got like a bunch of little bumps and it's really rough. If you were to run your hand across it, it would be like lots of tiny bumps and it would be rough like sandpaper. So this is going to have its own texture. I'm going to use lots of dots to give this a rough texture. That's fun. And just like we did with the feathers of the bird or the fur of the monster, I'll use a couple different colors and keep going with different layers of dots and different colors, and those will build up into a very cool, very powerful looking texture. Isn't that starting to look really nice and rough? Very strange to think of a cloud with a rough texture, but you know, we're just being creative and making stuff up here. All right, so I got a rough texture on that one. So that's about all we have for today. If you need to keep working on this, go ahead. I don't know how fast you work. Sometimes people work slowly or quickly. It's different for everyone, and that's fine. So if you need to keep working, go ahead. Find some time to finish this one up. And most importantly, I would say, try to find a way to use textures in any of your art. You know, if you're making a person, what kind of texture does their shirt have? Is it smooth or do they have a fuzzy sweater? What kind of texture does their hair have? Is it spiky texture? Is it fluffy texture? Is it smooth texture because they use a lot of hair gel? Right? There's a lot of different textures. If you're drawing an animal, if it's a lizard, maybe it has lots of little scales for a scaly texture. Right? Like a lizard's scales would look like this. Scaly texture. There's lots of different textures. Maybe try to find some textures in real life, like maybe feel your table. How would you describe that texture? How would you draw that texture? So there's a lot that you can do with texture in your art. All right, so thanks for tuning in, everybody. I miss you all. I hope you're doing okay out there, and just keep making art, keep being awesome.